Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today's Clip Studio Paint webinar will be on tips on painting and drawing stylized portraits in Clip Studio Paint. It will be presented by Mel Milton. Before we begin the webinar, there are some housekeeping items that we'd like to review with you. The webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. All attendees will be muted. The Q&A session will be during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Attendees can ask questions in the GoToWebinar question box right away. Due to time constraints, not all questions will be answered. The webinar will be recorded. The recording will be shared on social media and will be sent via email to all registrants and attendees. Today's panelists are Fahim Niaz, myself, Joanna Brower from Celsius, and Mel Milton, your presenter. For those of you who are joining us for the first time and have never heard of Clip Studio Paint is your all-in-one solution for stunning, ready-to-publish illustrations, comics, manga, and animations. To learn more about Clip Studio Paint, please visit us at clipstudio.net/en or at graphicsly.com. And with that, we'll be passing the reins of the webinar over to Mel Milton, where he will discuss his tips on painting and drawing stylized portraits in Clip Studio Paint. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Raheem. Joanna, I'd like to give a special thanks to Graphicsly, Celsius, and Wacom for sponsoring this and get the opportunity to talk about something that I hold dearly to myself. My fun and excitement. So I apologize because I'm going to be really excited throughout this, but super nervous. So with that said, I will go ahead and share some of my work while I give a brief introduction of who I am. For those who don't know me, my name is Mel Milton. I've been in the creative industry for over 20 years. I've done everything from t-shirt design, web design, concept art, children's books, but most notably, I was a character animator at Disney Interactive. Currently, I am a freelance illustrator and I teach figure drawing at Utah Valley University. So some of the things that you're seeing are, what I'm showing is what I'm known for is my Dooks. So this is not really something that it's not like these are work pieces. These are, my Dooks. Okay, let me back up. What a Duke is it's short for Dookie, meaning poop or crap. So when I went off on my own to work for myself, this is like my jogging or my exercise is just to, take a small subject and not be so caught up in perfection. Just, an easy way to teach myself. So when asked to do this, I had a hard time deciding on what subject to talk about because I'm fairly new to Clip Studio. So I've been using Adobe Photoshop for pretty much my whole career. And so making that change to Clip Studio was quite daunting because, again, I wasn't really happy with going to the subscription based with Adobe. And I'd heard good things about Clip Studio. So giving it a whirl, I was really impressed, so I'm happy that I made the change. And then, the reason why I chose this subject is just the face alone there. I think that's where most storytelling starts. You get to know a character through their face. You get, a little bit about emotions from their face. It's usually the first place. So to me, it's always had. I've always been interested in that, and so me, I always try to capture like all the subtleness, and push those extremes, just so I can learn a bunch of stuff. So that's what this webinar is basically going to be about, is how I go through the process of using Clip Studio in my workflow. So let's get to it. I'm sorry, I could go on forever. So catch me, and drawing and talking at the same time is, not my forte. So So I'm going to start off with the basics and kind of explain what it is that I look at. Um, I am not formally trained, and so a lot of the ways that I learned was intuitive, and the basics I skipped for many, 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 many years. And again, I go back to my past self and go, "That's the dumbest move you could ever make. Go learn the basics." Um, but again, I wanted to rush and get to the good stuff. So I'm just going to briefly go over what's in my mind with the basics. And there's lots of great tutorials out there, but this is not like end all be all way of thinking. It's just I look at it as is my foundation, and I try to keep things simple as humanly possible because I'm very ADD, and so by keeping it simple, um, I can add more things and have a checklist. So I think of things in threes. So first off, as I look, things like the space between the eyes is one eye length, right? And I use the sphere to grab my plumb lines and have that eye spot ready, and then from that sphere, from the eyes, the corner of the eyes, you get the ears, and then I hang my jaw on the bottom of that sphere. Now, I've seen other ways, but this is basically what I'm thinking when I'm even looking over my reference. I look for these main features. So again, when I think of things in threes, okay, so if I were to practice, let me go ahead and practice. So what I would do is I would, you know, practice this for a long time. Just this right here, getting um, varying angles and learning how to read the form. Now, again, just even doing circles and trying to close them up and getting neat. Again, I haven't warmed up, but this is what warm up is. All right. I think of how many varying ways can I look at the form. And it's just like get the gesture, right? So that's the basic thing, and then the other two things as I do the construction, you know, um, ear will come off the side, right? And then again, I'll think of the ear, add the ear where it needs to be, just general placement to get feeling, right? I'm not trying to go perfect. I'm just trying to get an understanding of the forms. And then the other thing is, again, is add that jaw. So I'll add the jaw, right? I'll add the jaw in varying ways, you know, just so it can get an idea of what I want the form to do, right? Where it's at. And again, this is just my practicing, warming up. I will, get my mind right with um, where I'm placing things. And then that's my main three things. Sorry, that's my main three things: the head, the ears, and the jaw. Pretty much fill out the structure of the head. And then when I go in and think about the eyes, nose, and mouth, I think of like this diamond. It's just easy for me to, where the eyebrows start is the top of the diamond. The corners, the corners of the eyes is that one point, and then when I go down to the bottom, that's the bottom. Excuse me. That's the bottom of the mouth, bottom of the lip. So I'll take that point and take it to the bottom of the lip. And again, this is not about. It's not. I'm not trying to get anything right or wrong. I'm just trying to feel out where my forms are, and then kind of make it muscle memory um, to so that when I get to placing things, this is not something that I actually think about. It's just there, in my mind to make sure that, oh, did I tackle that if something didn't measure out right, um, you know, to go back and think of, right? And then again, like I said, I'll do the eyes one apart, then I'll from the from the middle of the eye, is where the bridge of the nose starts. And again, there's the bottom of my mouth. And so, I'll split the difference. Same thing, different angle, eye and, you know, my nose, and then to the bottom is my mouth, and then following the shapes. So, doing practices like these, I did them over and again. It's not the most exciting and most fun thing, but it would help me to feel the form, not be so flat. and think of angles and think more, more as what I'm trying to do. Because then that shape, like I said, once I have that shape, the jaw could be squashed a little bit, right? So I can take that jaw, squash it a little bit, or I can elongate that jaw. But it's I think that the head, same thing. This round circle part, I could sit and go, okay, I can move this line down to get a different feeling, and say that's the cheeks right there, and that the eyes play off of that. Now we have that baby kind of feel, right? It's like smaller proportions. So, and I'll keep the same things in mind, but I can bend those shapes to whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve. um, Other things to keep in mind, especially like when, again, we're talking stylized, and so what I try to do is get most of this stuff understood so it becomes muscle memory, so that in my mind I can pick and choose the things that I'm trying to recall. So again, keeping things in threes is easy for me to say, okay, did I nail these things? Move on to the next spot. And again, moving on, even like, okay, if I start with the eyes, right? I always think of like pivots, right? On how an eye will pivot. So, you say you have your eye like this, you got the top, you got the bottom, and here's the pupil, here's the eyebrow, right? Okay, I can even keep that shape. But again, thinking in threes, I'll think of how can I, change the way it feels. So keeping it threes, it's, I'll change the angle. I don't know what I'm doing. Hopefully I didn't do anything wrong. All right, so I can change the angle of that eye to give it a different feel. Even though I can keep the shape the same, you know, the eye will feel lots different just changing the angle. And keeping in threes, because again, if I go flat, angled one way, angled the other way, it's things that I can look for in my reference. I can sit and say, okay, I see this specific angle. It might be just a little bit, it might be a lot, depending on, again, making that stylized choice. I start with these as a base, and then I can go in between, but keeping it in threes as I construct it, it's just easy as I go through, make sure that I hit the things that I want. Same thing with nose. If I do the nose, right, you can do a nose that's straight across, right? Or I can change the angle of how that nose goes and say go up, it's a little bit more, pointed up, changing that angle, or I can make it more that you don't even see the nostrils and it's more pointing down, right? So keeping it in those threes, um, I can cycle through it to get that stylized. Again, it's just choices that I'm trying to make as I go through, things that I can change. So I don't like to stick with reference. I like to take things and I go, okay, I see it's doing this. Where can I make choices and flourish on my own, right? So it's, to me, these kind of things are like Mary Had a Little Lamb. Like you come in and it's like you get the notes for Mary Had a Little Lamb. Mary had a little lamb. It's but you don't have to play it that way, right? Mary had a little lamb. You can whatever. I'm not a terrible singer, but you can make it in a way that where you flourish. How long do you hold notes for? And so to me, it's like looking at your reference. These are ideas that I keep in my mind to be like, okay, where can I flourish? Where are things that I can make the decision? And again, same thing with mouth. You know, I can make a mouth more straight across, right? And I can make, change that angle, and it changes the way that mouth looks. Same thing with the other way, right? These kind of three variations just from the pivot, how to pivot those angles in your face, is again, keeping it in threes as I go through it. These are decisions that I can make really quick because I go, okay, 1, 2, 3, next, 1, 2, 3, next, 1, 2, 3, next. What did I miss? What am I missing? And within portraits, there's so many decisions that you make, right? So, especially like what type of portrait, is it a caricature? Is it realism? Is it a candid? Is it simple? Is it abstract? There's so many decisions you can make, it can be overwhelming. And I think a lot of people, especially like me, when I looked at it, it's like it seems like portraits are simple, but to really evoke an emotion out of that portrait, it's being mindful of things that evoke emotions in you. And so, how can you express those things? So, keeping a checklist and keeping it simple, you can always make sure that you're getting your idea across. And again, um, as I'm thinking through that simple, um, keeping it simple, again, small, medium, large, I always think of the idea of what I'm trying to convey. What's the most important? What's the second most important? And what's the third most important? So as I pour over, so we'll go, hopefully that wasn't, I'm trying to be quick so that when I get to the demo part of it, um, that it makes a little bit more, cohesive as I look through my reference and I talk about it. So let me go ahead and kind of show you along the lines like what it is that I'm thinking over the reference. So right now, okay, I've picked this reference because if you've been following me on social media, I've been on this retro. I like that retro painting, old school painterly like retro stuff. So I've been taking black and whites like this and converting them into superheroes. Just giving them my take on retrofitting superheroes. So first thing is that I like as I look at it, what intrigued me about this picture. It's right in the eyes specifically, but again, I look for that eye container with the diamond, right? Um, and again, how it wraps around the face, watching that form around the face, not just keeping everything just straight across, but I wrap that form around the face. And again, that diamond, it could be twisted. I'm just putting it here because this is the first thing that I look for, right? Especially because again, in the face, this is where most of the attention is going to be. So uh, then the other things that I start thinking about, again, when you have that kind of contrast, contrast adds to a really good story. It's that conflict. Something's fighting against something else, and it creates that tension. So a lot of the things that I think through, again, keeping it simple, I have a simple versus complex side. I'll look for something that's along those lines that I could exaggerate or play up on, because again, to me, this is framing the face really well, and it's making the features inside that face. Um, it has a lot of appeal to me. And again, I'm basing this off of just what I'm going through personally as I look over my reference. And then I also start looking for gestures and movement. How am I moving around that picture? What are the things? Why was I so drawn to this? And there's a secondary, right? So we have the face that's there, that we know. That would probably be my most important focal point is the face, and then everything else is supplementing it. So it's like, what can I do that can supplement the idea? And again, her hair is playing this nice frame, right? We got this nice framing, but it's not just it's got this flow to it, and especially like everything else is supplemental. And there's all these fun things that make your eye dance around the page. And so to me, and again, that's just things that I like to feel out of a picture. Why, as I'm looking through the picture, why is it that I really like this, the shapes, um, um, what is drawing, what are the things that are making me want to put down a first line or a first shape? What are those things, right? And so it's analyzing those things, and again, making them in a way that, okay, what was the most interesting part, and then make that your focal point. What was the second most interesting part? To me, the hair is secondary, but you could spend all your time and put all the detail in the hair, and if you put too much, you could take away from what the face is doing, what you're trying to convey. So again, by having that simple, what's my most important, what's my second most important, what's my third most important, and then keeping it there, then I can sit and say, oh, like I'm tinkering around in the background over here, but is that really important to me? And currently, I'm like, that's not what drew me into the picture. And to have a background, it's great, but again, if the background, what level is that background mean to you, right? And so again, that's like always having that third for me, because again, I'm all over the place, but being able to go, okay, what is that most important thing? Okay, go back to that, make sure you nail that, and everything else is like, you know, sugar on frosting on the cake, right? And then I start thinking light directions. Again, I'm keeping this black and white because there's so many other things that can be thought of when you're looking at. And again, color um, is another feature that you've got a bazillion and one ways of making decisions. But again, it's looking at it and observing, what drew you to it. So but again, I always take the same kind of thinking when doing colors, warm, cool, and your mid-tone, right? And so same thing with black and white. I think light, dark, and medium, tones. And so keeping those things in threes is easier for me to do that. So as I pour over it. So for this demo, just because time wise, I figured it'd be easier for me to just stick with the black and white and show you how I'm making my decisions. Because again, there's so many things that you can learn from just a face alone. Again, um, I like to think gesturally. I love the movement, and a lot of the times it's like, you know, especially like when we're using when I use reference, I try not to be a stickler about proportions. More so is that, am I getting movement? Am I getting the texture? Is there a lot of textures? Is where it needs to be? And again, do they supplement all the things that I'm trying to do? So there's the primer to all of it, right? Just so that you can see beforehand. I'm sure that I rushed really quickly over that, but I wanted to get a feel because again, when I was first learning, I wasn't as mindful. I just went into it. And so when I went back to the basics, it was learning how to simplify things that made sense to me and having that checklist. Because again, most of these kind of drawings, it's not really for anybody else but myself. And so I also had to take in consideration, what are my goals with this, doing this kind of stuff. And for the most part, this is just seeing and listening to myself. These kind of practices that I've been doing are more for me to hear myself. It's again, I call them poop, but after I finish, I celebrate the idea that I took the time to do something that I enjoy, right? And to take that pressure off, to take the perfectionist off and just enjoy it for what it is. Now, again, if somebody asks you to do, for money, it changes the way you think about it. So always going back and listening to how you feel uh, about what you're trying to accomplish and having that goal of what does it mean? What does that? It will keep you. It's not that the frustration will ever go away, but you can go easier on yourself. And so again, when I said like this demo, I'm sitting here going, oh, I want people to learn, but again, it's like I know that I just need to shift into a place where it's where I find value and just share the best of my ability. All right, so as we go into this demo, I kind of already blocked out just because I knew I'm like I've timed this out a couple of times, and again trying to talk and draw at the same time, I'm not as efficient. So okay, so taking all that into consideration, again, there's so many different ways a face can play out. And so to me, I got messed up in the early on because I go, majority of all that crap, I don't see it as predominant, I don't see that average face as average as I thought it should be, And so one of the reasons why I never really tended to learn the basics is because I was like, I couldn't see it real world. And then but now it makes sense to have a place to start from. So if you're not starting from the beginning, slow down, take the time to learn it, right? Because again, that's where confidence comes from. And a lot of times people are like, I want to get fast or I want to get really confident in these things. It's understanding that the basics and having a solid foundation to work from that gives you that kind of confidence. And so, a lot of people are like, hey, I want to work faster. Um, really it's not really even working faster. It's being confident to lay the things down the way you want to, and be all right. Move on to the next thing. So as you can see here, I've kind of blocked out the hair into the basic shapes, and I've brought in this kind of guideline to show me where I'm gonna start hanging things from, especially like from the eyes is where I'm gonna, where I would start laying things down. But first thing is I hadn't played into what her mid-tone is. So I'll go in and I'll pick my, about 50% gray, and that'll be my base tone, and I'll work from there. So I try, especially like on black and whites, I try to stay away. Oops, try to stay away from using blacks and whites all the way right off the bat, right? So most of the stuff that I try to do is, and again, I'm using like a flat brush. So, okay, so let me talk about brushes for a little bit, because I know there's a lot of people that want to, hey, what brushes are you using? Um, I like to handle, especially like for this one, I like to handle it like uh, like painting, right? I'll think about painting, and I don't like a real round tip. I like a brush tip, right? And then the other thing is I like um, more of a dry brush. So, um, so with the dry brush, again, the reason why I like a dry brush more so is that I don't like everything super smooth and clean and everything like that. I like to be able to see strokes, especially because it starts showing you like the form. Like, as I go, okay, I'll sample from one area is what I do. I sample, and this is how I blend. But I'll follow along, like feel what the face is doing, not just lay it down. I'll find a direction and feel it, and follow the forms, right? And then I'll look at what's going on with the reference, and see how I can continue to follow those forms. So again, I'm taking the things that I already know. Like again, here's my thing that's in my head. I'm not really looking at it, but I just for placement sake, right? And then I'm looking at how things are wrapping around the head, not just taking it and going flat, but feeling the form and wrapping it around the head, right? And again, this is that stage where, I'm not really trying to get everything perfect. And again, I'm working really small. So here's the other thing. The reason why I like working small like this is it because at some point I won't dig in so far in, and lose that block in, making sure that I'm tackling things that I'm trying to convey, keeping it in bigger block shapes, right? So as I continue to block, I'm looking for shapes. Um, so like in here in the hair where it's much darker, I'll start blocking those kind of shapes in. And again, it's just here, like it's like the shadows under here are really much darker, and give that form, give that hair some volume is what I love about it, right? Close into here, there's a lot of fun things. And again, things like this where it's, you know, um, where it kind of blends into there. That's why I like the textured dry brush, is that it will, it will give me that movement that I'm looking for, right? Another thing that I really like, um, especially like with Clip Studio, in other programs I wasn't really too fond of it. I mean, I liked it, but it's the lasso fill brush. And what I really like about the lasso fill is it just feels good, right? So say like I need to carve out other shapes, it just I can go in and still keep shapes and block out. So this is the other way. So again, when taking on, there's not like one right way to start a drawing. Sometimes I will use just this lasso tool to block out the shapes, because it's easier to feel the shapes, with the lasso tool. Like I can really quickly lay down shapes with the lasso tool, right? You know, get feelings, you know, get everything where I need to. If I need to move anything, I'm not really, you know, at this point, I'm not really invested into it. Everything is just kind of like getting things blocked to a place, like a good point, right? I can, bam, go in and especially like, again, for the hair, I could have used that as well, you know, come in and see these shapes in here and be more organic, but yet, um, you know, block things in really quick. Right, there's this, and again, I'm not trying to be, hey, let me get that exactly the way it is. I'm just mainly going over and trying to get that feeling, you know, the general feeling. You know, I'm not all the way trying to make exactly the same picture. All right, so the darkness in here, see, it's like blocked. Even though there's like that fade, you know, I'll block that in, block this in. It's really dark right here, so I'll take that same thing, block this in, and then I'll take my you know, a textured brush, you know, and this is where we talk, you know, where we get to like edge control, right? So I like using, you know, let the pressure sensitivity of the program um, build it in, right, to soften those edges up and give that gradation the way I want. But it also gives me the opportunity to, you know, again, try to keep that form. Like I can see it with as I build up, I can see the direction of, you know, where it's going. And I've exaggerated it a little bit, but again, I'll take a look and I'm like, at this point, fix things in a way that I want to fix them, right? Go on, start working in like gradations of the how the light is falling onto the face, and the light here is really subtle. So, um, so my thing is by doing things over and over again, then you have the ability to focus more on certain aspects of a drawing, you know. So like the measuring part, I don't think about it as much. So now I'm at a point where it's okay, you know, like how's that light playing? And I can think about that, you know, without getting too overboard, you know, and what's my important part. Again, I don't like going in really close, you know, for my blocking. I'll look at stuff and again, at this size, just getting the gist of everything. Because you know, I won't spend all my time here. You know, I'll start to beef that up. I'll blow this up, and then I'll start going into my details, and then try more to steer clear of just everything about the reference. I won't give it up 100%, but you know, I'll start trying to wrangle it in, take the take this on its own, and then try to make more of uh, expand more on like my own choices and what I'm thinking of. Right. Another thing is that I really like about Clip Studio. Again, I normally work with my tab mate, and so all my like the tab mate was like the most beautiful thing that I've ever come across because I am a keyboard shortcut fiend, and I know inside of Clip Studio one of the keyboard shortcuts, you know, to zoom in and out, I get what is it, Control. Oops, what do I got going on? I don't even know which one I'm doing. So my keyboard shortcut, I know like there's this Control plus and minus to zoom in and zoom out. But I notice on some occasions I'll hit the minus without hitting the control and it'll turn. And it took me forever. It drew me insane because I was like, what just happened? Then I had to find how did I turn it the other way, and that would be the apostrophe. So so again, Clip Studio, the tab mate is really nice because it puts all the shortcut keys there. It's like I don't have to go to my keyboard. So if you ever want to give that a whirl, that is, but I'm not using it for this demonstration. But what I do love in the navigator is the ability to flip, so, that it'll flip everything, in Photoshop, I ended up having to make a keyboard shortcut with my tab mate. I have it built in, but, to be able to see it and it stays in the navigator the way it needs to, or flipping it up just to check, is it looking right, is a great way to make sure that, things are proportionately the way you want them. Not like, again, not perfect, but the way you want them. So yeah, I'm probably gonna think with this a little bit more. I've dinked with it a couple of times thus far, and okay. So again, when we get that contrast, when I start getting into the darkers, I want to leave those for areas that that I want them to be there for, right? So it's making the decisions like where can I create that draw the eye. So it's like a magic show. And with that being said, you want to lead, the eye to where you want them to see, and then the rest is like, you know, supplementary, but right, it's like you don't want to, sit and talk about what your other hand is doing, right? You want them to see the magic. So that's why by taking um, and making decisions on purpose is basically guiding where do I want to guide the eye. So again, um, I try not to use the darks until I really want to get there, and where am I going to put them on purpose, not just use them all the way up and then scale down, but use those darks and highlights, because to me that's where all the fun is when you get to the highlights and the shadows, right? So again, I'm not used to drawing and talking, so hopefully any of what I'm saying, it's making sense, that somebody understands what I'm talking about. All right, but this is what I do. It's just analyzing, forever analyzing in what ways. Um, I do a lot of sampling. Right? I'll sample what I already have, especially like with colors, because then it gives me variations a whole lot more. Especially like when using a drier brush, because you get that grit and noise in there. That it'll give me those feelings that I'm looking for. Okay, and I'm probably zooming in too much on this already. And it happens. That's why I said it's like I shouldn't zoom in this way. I usually try to keep out and move things around. So say things like this, where it's like I could keep going on the eyes, but this is probably a little lower than what I'd want. So here's the chance to move them, right? Before I've invested so much, I can move them up, enter, deselect, and that was even more terrible. Maybe not so much. Redo that. So I did like them moving up a little bit, but not a whole lot. All right, coming up on. So anyways, I would keep going. I'm gonna go on to the next part. So I have this one that I had ended up working on that I moved to. So I would get to this stage, and then flatten this out. And then this is where I would get into oops, enlarging it, and then getting into the refining, right? So now, now that I'm like, I want to get into details and be able to refine and get everything like buttery smooth, I would take this. Oops. I'm just going to paste it on another layer because I had it with the reference. And then I will scale this up. Oops, grab the wrong one. scale this up so now I can get into the details. What? Wrong one. Okay, I'll collapse these two. And I did another one. Again, you can see, here's another one that I did. I got into the 45-minute range. And that looks different than this one, right? Each time there's other things that I see. So even sometimes doing something multiple times, you know, is a chance to be able to listen to see how your thinking evolves over doing it multiple times. Because again, I'm not really trying to stay super strict into my reference. I'm mainly trying to get that like retro feel. So I'm pulling this one because it has more of the feel that I was looking for. Um, More of the feel that I was looking for, that retro feel. So now this is where I would take it and I go, okay, let me start refining things and adding personal decisions. So one thing like, so I would say like there would be, oh geez, apologies again. All right, come on, you can do it. Okay. All right, now that I've resized this, don't touch anything. Sometimes it'll just snap back. So at this point, it's like, where else can I make decisions, when I'm refining, so I'll look and I'll go, say like here where this shadow is, right? I mean, it's pretty solid black, right? If you look, there's a little bit of bounce light going in there. And to me, this is a place where it's again where in the shadows you can exaggerate in the shadows as well. Everywhere is a place you have the ability to exaggerate. So so like I said, I like that kind of core shadow, and then it softens up inside, right? And so I'll take that and I'll exaggerate a little bit more than it needs to be. I just it just looks nice to me. I love it. I'm silly like that. But it's things like that where it's like, okay, now it's not that it's right or wrong. I mean, yeah, you could say, yeah, it's totally wrong, Mel, but for me, I enjoy it. So it's like a spot that I can do that for, right? And then as I get into details in the eyes, again, I got to go back to, what is the important part? What am I really trying to get to? And again, the eyes are what, really drew me into this reference. So this is where I put a majority of my effort, right? Is in here, right, to get that feel that I'm looking for. And again, by going now and going in with my darker darks, it gets those things to pop. And then again, in the same front, getting those highlights now. So like if I go in and get into the highlights, you know, now we get then you start putting those things in on purpose. It's not like that's visibly there that you can see it, but this is somewhere where you can exaggerate. You can say, okay, I'm going to exaggerate um, the feeling of that, right? Again, as I follow what the references, I'll see and I'll go, okay, same thing. That highlight starts over here, kind of in here, and then I'll fade it out and follow the forms, have it wrap around. Think of the shape of that head, right? And again, I'm keeping it really rough at this stage, but I am getting to the point where I'm refining things and things like, again, I love a dry brush, especially like for these little happy accidents, that I like in here where the light kind of blends the hair into the forehead. I love crap like that. That stuff just ooh, and then leave it, right? Don't tinker with it anymore. Leave it. Leave that alone. Back in the day, I'd be like, oh man, I got to get every little hair in there. No, no, no. Leave that crap. Get to the point where you feel comfortable with what you're trying to accomplish. And so Again, one of the things I like to, is to keep that brushy type feel, and then again, getting into the highlights. Now I'll go in here and zoom into the places. I'm all over the place if you haven't noticed. I'm all over the place. So I apologize, because again, drawing and talking is not my forte. All right, so I'll grab that and again, find that form and follow along the form. Don't just, I don't just scrub that in there. There's that form. I try to follow the form underneath and feel it through, so that it feels good. And you feel what the form is doing. All right. Same thing in here. There's a shape in here that I really like, and it's just there, and then soften certain areas up. All right. This is how I do it. It's just tinkering, a lot of tinkering, but always in my mind going over, like I said, feeling what the skull is doing underneath. Um, and again, it's exaggerate things even more, because this is going to be the darker side of it, just like that ball. If you were to shade a ball, thinking of it, because this is going to be away from the light. All right, smoothing things out. Where are we at time? Are we good with time? I mean, you want to start asking questions?
I think we're ready for questions at this point.
Sorry,
So,
hopefully it wasn't too terrible.
no, it was fantastic, Mel. So, um, I'll actually let
I'll just keep
Joanna
going
jump in,
and
and
talk.
then she'll ask her questions right away. All right,
Thanks,
thank you for now.
Joanna.
Okay. We have a ton of questions, so
Oh
let's start
crap.
with the
Ah,
very basic ones. What is your setup? What's your drawing tablet, your computer, your
got
Clip
it.
Studio version?
Right. I am so the tablet version I'm using a Wacom Mobile Studio Pro 16. And to me, I mean, I get this one asked a lot, like, is it better than the iPad, or is it this and that and the same thing with brushes? The one that gets you the job done is the one that I don't need to be mobile. So the Mobile Studio Pro 16 is quite large, and it's not like something I would tote around every day. But again, I don't go out very much, and so this at least gets me out of my office, because if I go in my office, my family seems to lose their mind. Clip Studio version. One of the reasons I went with the EX version, because there's animating, and I do want to get to a point to where one of my loves is animating, and I was super excited to see that they had support for I think I did support for 2D animation, and that they added being able to add sound clips. And I know there was a previous webinar with Ruben Laura that I was all super excited about. Oh, animating in Clip Studio. So that's the reason why I bought it. Now, um, again, I look at I used Photoshop for years, and it's not like I hate Photoshop now. It's Photoshop still has that value for me, but again, for what I needed, Clip Studio is so robust, and so I went with the EX version. It was a great deal. It came on sale. I can't remember what I got it for, but if you don't even care about the animation, it's getting the Pro version is still so robust, and there's such a huge built-in community for it that that's what I really like. Truly, the community involved. And again, finding brushes for it is quite simple. So that's my setup. And again, I have the tabmate little tabmate that's built for it. And again, it's pretty magical. I hope to do a video on it one day, because I was so excited about it. I was probably more excited than I needed to be about it because again, I'm a keyboard shortcut guy. So that's that. Did I miss anything?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
perfect. Thank
I'm
you.
keeping you awake.
um, first, further for your starting out portraits, like what's your usual resolution for your canvas, and how
Yep.
many layers do you usually work with?
All right. So, great question. I usually, again, because I really never, I never have it in like I'm going to sell these things or I'm going to make prints out of them. But I'll usually stick to just regular paper size or an A4 size, something that's 8.5 by 11 at 300 DPI, so that if I need to, I mean, it's printable, but I'm not printing it super large. I'm not, but I've been getting asked a lot more for prints and stuff like that. So, I probably work on a larger scale, especially like if you were going to print, maybe work on 11 by 17 and, 600 DPI. I know that there's a lot of people that do that. But again, for me, I don't think much in it. I just want it to be like the most natural feeling. So again, I'll usually use 8.5 by 11 at 300 DPI.
Okay. You do like portraits are your strength, and if we look at your Instagram, that's a lot of what you do.
Yeah.
Do you always work from reference, or do you also
No,
use work from your imagination?
no, and again, because when I first started in art, like reference was the no-no. Like, again, I didn't start doing art until I was, I mean, like actually trying to be like this professional artist until I was like 30. And when I got my foot into the studios is when I finally saw that people used reference. And I thought, I felt cheated. I felt like I was lied to because I never used reference, or, I was wrong, or I wasn't a real artist. And even back, going further back when when I thought about being an artist, yeah, I mean, I remember when computers came into play and people were like, if you use computers, you're not a real artist. So there was all this dogma attached to trying to learn. And so, to me, I use reference. And again, when I'm posting stuff up, I'm only posting a sliver of what I'm doing. Because again, right now I'm currently learning Blender and I'm learning sculpting and I'm learning traditional painting and I'm learning, going back and learning animation. But the thing that I post up is it's like my exercise. So to me, reference is like building that up, because if there's somebody who says, they've never used reference, I mean, everything's built off of something else. And again, having a solid foundation is helpful because I don't know what light is doing. And sometimes I don't know what color is doing. And so grabbing reference is a great way of doing that. Now, like if I were to do work and it didn't call for reference, I would grab up a bunch of stuff, get it into my mind, the feeling that I'm trying to grab, and then put all the reference away and then draw, from that memory of what I was feeling out of the reference. But it's using reference properly, and again, I'm not trying to sit and go over here and say like this is original art. I just sitting here saying, I just want to draw and have fun and learn something. And so I take things that move me and I analyze it. And it's not, again, if somebody says, oh, you use a light table to trace things. Again, I go, if it helps somebody to learn something, and they use it properly, it's just a tool. I watch a lot of people that are traditional. They go, I don't use a computer because, you're not as mindful of it. And it's true, but they won't ever touch digital or, vice versa. So again, when you're looking at reference, how I look at reference, I like letting people know I use reference. To a point where I have Pinterest. You can go find me on Pinterest, and I keep all my reference there. But I stopped sharing it with people because I noticed a lot of people like they go, well, I'll use what he finds rather than look for yourself and find that reference. If you don't have a folder of things that inspire you, you're doing yourself a disservice. And so to me, I like sharing that part of it because again, I didn't get my foot in the door until I was 33 because I always thought I had to come out of my head to be original. Yeah, hopefully that answered.
Yes, yes, that
Hopefully that
answered like a
answered it.
ton of other questions too.
I know.
So, um, since you do a lot of stylized portraits, like how do you bring in dynamic and movement into your portraits?
right? So that was one of the biggest things for me. Again, when I made the decision to be an artist, a lot of the guys that inspired me, I first started being enamored with cartoons, like the Saturday morning cartoons. So things like I was really inspired by like Bruce Timm's Justice League and Superman and Batman, especially like the female characters, because again, if you can't control those lines and shapes, I don't care, you know, how round you make boobs, you'll still lose this feminine thing to it, right? And so to me, I always go to the feminine because there's this appeal there that's really hard to capture. So by having that goal, one of the things I knew is like I want to be able to make super long lines, super gestural, right? And so getting that straight curve kind of feel. And so things that I would do just practicing is do these kind of things, right? Like I would write in a journal like neat cursive handwriting, 3 pages just to get conditioned. And I noticed I went from just using my wrist to moving down into my elbow and then using my shoulder. And then when I started getting into life drawing, I started realizing why they were drawing so big is getting that motion. And so to me, that was my goal. So if it's your goal to get that kind of thing, then first off, look for somebody who does that exact thing that you want to do, and then just try to emulate it. And you'll start listening to the decisions that they're making, right? And by having a kind of, a path to take, then you can hold yourself accountable. Are you achieving that thing and not stopping until you get it? So again, I would copy a lot of Bruce Timm stuff, Ben Caldwell, because I loved his shapes, Otto Schmidt, a lot of the guys who I thought could handle that female form and get those long lines and those um, feminine shapes. I really, because it was my goal, I wanted to be able to be more expressive with my drawing. And then learning animation also helped with that, to look at what the body could do, was eye-opening for me, because I learned it 3D and I really want to get to the point where I feel like I'm good enough to draw 2D. So hopefully that answered that. I will keep
Yes.
rambling, dang it. Joanna needs to go
It's
to
fine.
bed. Right?
Okay, we do two more questions.
Okay, two more questions.
Yes. So how do you decide how much to exaggerate versus how much to keep in proportion with the portrait?
Oh man, and that's why for that's why I'm saying like these portraits that I'm doing that I'm posting up online. These are places where I test those things out, right? So I could come in here and say, okay, the eyes are important. Like, how large can I make them? Right? If this is something you need to test out, then test them out. Like, you go in there and say, well, the eyes are important. Well, I want to make them large. I'm gonna and see, because like as an animator, a lot of the times it was, they would tell me, push it as far as you can as an animator, and then scale back, right? Then scale back, and then see how it feels. There's nothing wrong with it. That's why I go. It's how we put pressure on ourselves when we're creating stuff. Again, these are just my practice. So most of the times, if things that people won't see, um, again, like I said, like even with the shadow down there, it's like I like that. And so, but over time, I never understood like core shadow and bounce light and all that crap. That stuff went out my head as I was like, oh, it's too technical. But I got a feeling and I was like, I like that feel. And I'd look at it and see it in other paintings, like how people would handle that core shadow or how somebody handles a shape. And then um, I will section that shape off as I'm studying something and just don't try to think of the whole picture, but take that section and then go, where can I exaggerate? Let me push, pull, and think. And again, every time I tackle a drawing, I have different mindsets from all the different areas that I've been learning. So one moment I'll think like a sculptor, another moment I'll think like a painter, another moment I'll think like a graphic designer. And so it's bringing these kind of experiences into your art that helps you make those choices, right? And get you comfortable with like exploring. And that I think that's the best part of being an artist, is just seeing how far you can push yourself without being cliche. Like what you think, like just not going to exactly what you see, but where can you challenge yourself? And then find that subject. Because again, portraits. I try to tell my figure drawing class, I didn't do a figure drawing until I was 40, and then to teach it was like even more weird because I was going like, I have no idea about anatomy, but I know what the body can do, and I know for as long as I've been observing it for, I know where I can exaggerate stuff, and so you just got to put it to practice, and put it in a place where you're not going to be so frustrated that you're willing to dive deep, and that's why I take just the one subject. I can learn all kinds of different things. So, experiment. Don't be afraid of it, right? Dang
All
it,
right,
Joanne, I'm trying. I'm trying. I swear to
you're
God,
doing
I'm trying.
great. You're doing fantastic. So one last
One
question, like
last
how do
question.
you encourage your students or beginning artists to have an you can do it mentality?
Let's do it. I am going to Melivate because this is where I live. Those are the questions I love. Somebody must have knew. Somebody knew me, right? So to me, again, I call my stuff poop. It's Dukes. It's poop. But again, if you go onto my social media, I always end every post with "keep on keeping on." And this is not for anybody else because nobody got to see the suffering that I went through, um, and all the dark spots. I didn't have a whole lot of support going up. There wasn't a whole lot of people like me that was doing art. I didn't, but when I made the decision to do it, I was so excited and I was so because I'd waited so long, and I didn't want that what if. I wanted to be able to give my wife, that she could be proud of me. That it was hard, getting married and going. I have no value. I'm not adding anything to anything. But what I loved was art, and I really didn't own up to that, and I always felt bad. And so when I embraced art, I'm super excited about it. I share it freely because I've got a chance to see who I am in my art, to see my decisions, because that's all art is. It's what do you want that line to mean to you? What do you want that shape? Is it soft? If it's hard, it's this, but it's just the choice, right? It's as I draw, I don't think of past or future. I'm in the now. I'm just sitting here enjoying it. And the thing is, I get to the end, I'm like, it's poop. That's crap. I didn't do it as well. But when I look at it truly, it's something that's supposed to make me feel good. And so we I tell my students there's the logical mindset and there's the heart part that we all start off. The heart part that the dreamer that says, oh man, I want this feeling. And then we say, well, we want to make it a career or we want to do something serious with it. And all of a sudden the mind takes, well, let me take over. Let's make this logical and take all these steps. And again, I found myself when I was at the studios, I was sitting here going like I'm miserable. And how could I be miserable doing something I love? And so when I saw my daughter when she was first born and I went home to be this artist, I really got a chance to look at I went back to what it meant to me. And it was, again, I look and I go, I love it. I do it without anybody else telling me to do it. And I do it like breathing. And so to me, I know that there were a lot of artists, that's where they start. And it's like, I want this thing, I want to be better, but you never really define what better is. And so the thing is it's like, if you can start and celebrate, you know, hey, I did art. I'm celebrating right now that I did this seminar. Because again, that was not something that I thought I could do. And I don't think I'm like, regardless if I did it perfect or well, I did it. And so, after I finish this, I'm going to go celebrate because it's the part that has made my life more magical. I've met so many beautiful people. And I say to you, I say, what kind of experience do you want as an artist? And I tell my students, I go, if you look at it, you you are the captain of your ship, right? And even though that I'm sitting here giving information, um, you have to regurgitate that information and make it important to you. Any information you get is you saying this is important to me, and that's the beauty of it is you get to recognize that you are a part of the process. You are the main ingredient in your art, and that is a beautiful thing. So that's where I live, right? I suck at everything else, but art makes me happy. I'm sorry, Joanna. See, I'm trying to
That
be
was
like,
that was a beautiful finish. That could not have been a better lesson
all right,
for everyone here,
all
I
right.
think. Thank you very much from my
I,
end.
I love you guys. You guys are the best. Thanks for putting up with me.
All right, Mel, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. That was absolutely wonderful. I learned a lot. I'm sure everyone else learned a lot. And thank you so much for your time once again. For more information on Clip Studio, please go visit us at clipstudio.net/en or at graphicsly.com. And for more information about Mel and just to follow him and see what he's up to, please go to his social media sites. You'll see him right there on the screen, mel.milton.927 at Facebook, and then Mel made book Dooks for Instagram, and then his Twitch handle as well as his website are available there. And with that, Mel, thank you so much for your
Oh,
time. I really appreciate it.
thank you, sir. And again, I hope that I brought some value to people today. If I did for one person, it's been a success, and I'm glad I got the opportunity. I love you guys.
Take care. Thank you so much.
Keep on keeping
Thank
on.
you.
Take care.